Hey everybody, this is John from Models by John Michael. Y'all could go ahead and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. That would be amazing. The other thing you can do is follow me on Facebook and Instagram and check out some of the stuff that I've got posted over there. So it's time for a bench update. As you know, I've been working on the Tamiya 48th scale F-14 Tomcat. And a few quick comments about the kit before I go ahead and show you the progress that I've made. First of all, it's a great kit, true to Tamiya engineering fashion. It goes together extremely well without any serious hiccups or mishaps or anything like that. So that's really nice to have. I have seen some of the other kits. The Italeri kit is one that I've seen online. I haven't done it in person. Matter of fact, this is the first F-14 that I've ever built. But some of the other kits, I don't want to say that they're inferior, but they may give you more issues. I also know that Tamiya just recently came out with a 72nd scale F-14, which I don't have, and I wouldn't mind doing, but uh, you know, as of right now, I don't really need any more models in my stash. But if you're considering doing an F-14 and you maybe don't want to do a 48th scale, maybe a 72nd scale might be up your alley, because the F-14 is a big plane, even in 48th scale. So, and you'll see here in a second. And also, there is a 32nd scale F-14 that Tamiya has made as well. So you do have some options. And then there are other manufacturers who also have made the F-14. So if you don't want to spend the money, because this particular kit is going to run you more than $100. I think I picked this one up for, it was like 105, 110 bucks, somewhere around in there. I picked it up a couple of years ago. The prices now may have gone up a little bit since then. So that's something to be aware of as well. Not saying that you have to spend a ton of money to get a good kit. That's not always the case, but Tamiya kits usually tend to run you at least a little bit more in terms of price. So if that's not your jam and you want to go something a little cheaper, maybe look at Revell. I don't know if they have an F-14 off the top of my head. They probably do. And then, of course, as I just mentioned, the Italeri kit. Trumpeter may have one, but Trumpeter is going to run you probably about the same as Tamiya, and then Hasegawa as well. So just something to be aware of, but you do have options. You don't have to go with the Tamiya kit. So I'll show you the kit as she looks right now. Here you go. I just, the other day, let me get my, here we go. All right. I haven't put the exhaust nozzles on, so I just kind of put my fingers in there to hold it. Just the other day, I finished putting on the landing gears. I've had the main landing gears on for a little while, and I just ended up putting the nose on there, as well as all of the landing gear doors. So all of those are done, and now I'm working on all of the undercarriage stuff. So your missile mounting points, your tanks, all that stuff. I'm working on all of that. So eventually you'll have a video with all that stuff on there. As you can see, it's got the carrier. I don't know what they call this, trolley or whatever in case. I'm not exactly sure what this thing is called, but this would be mounted to the deck. This is the shuttle. I think that's what it's called. It might be the shuttle that the forward tow bar would go into, and then this would pull the jet off of the aircraft carrier. So it's in the squatted position, so they lower the front landing gear, so the plane sits a little bit with the front a little lower than if it was just in a standard takeoff mode, say from a runway or something like that. And basically, we just flings it off the aircraft. So I'm doing it in the Jolly Roger paint scheme. So that's the Jolly Roger decals that you're seeing on there. And eventually it'll have the beautiful vertical tail flashes on there. But for now, this is how she's looking. I still have to do some weathering, so I've done some pre-shading and things like that, and I went through, if you go on Instagram, you'll see pictures of it to where at first I painted it all black, and then I went over it with like 3 or 4 different colors. So I did some light blues, some whites, I did a yellow, I did it like a light green underneath the gray, and then this way, when you look at it, you get some variation in the coloring of the panels. So this way, it's not just a flat gray. And then I went over all of the panel lines, and I used the Flores weather wash to kind of, to dirty it up a little bit. But I want to put more weathering on there because I've seen some pictures of some F-14s, and they're quite dirty. And I kind of want to simulate that, but of course, with any weathering, you always have to be aware less is more, right? So, because if you overdo it, then it just looks unrealistic. So, I have to be careful of that. And anytime you weather as well, be careful that you're not going overboard with it. Now, and we've all done it. When I first started weathering aircraft, I went way overboard with it, and I look at some of those older builds, and they don't look the greatest. So less is always more, and that's something to be very, very aware of, especially with that. So, but I will get there eventually to do some weathering because I want to simulate, where the crew walks up here on the top of it, because they get in from this side of the aircraft over here. Is this where the crew ladder comes down? So there would be dirt and smudges all along here. There'd be dirt and smudges up here. And then, of course, along the back where all the maintenance crew walks, there would be dirt and smudges up here. So I want to simulate all that to kind of be true to life, things like that. And then the other thing would be things like oil leaks and whatnot that would be down here on the bottom of the aircraft. So that also involves some research. And that's the other thing, too. If you're weathering an aircraft, do some research. Look at real world photos, not models, okay? Because sometimes model builders might get it wrong. I mean, one of the most, I think, famous ones would be for the B-17, right? Because on the B-17, toward the trailing edge of the wing, you have these little vent slots, and there's, I don't know how many, 6 or 8 of them along, along the back. And I've seen where people will put what looks like exhaust marks on there, and that is not true to life, to what actually came out of those. Those are actually just airflow vents, essentially. But putting weathering or putting exhaust marks on those wasn't accurate. So, and I've seen several model builders do that. You have to make sure that you're looking at actual photos of actual aircraft, so this way you know what it is that you're doing when it comes to weathering. So that's why I'm stressing that with this particular model, right? I'm going to look at real world photos of the F-14. That's the beautiful thing about the internet, obviously. But I want to weather this thing appropriately. And so I recommend that you would do the same, no matter what model you're building, whether it's an F-14 or a Wildcat or, an Osprey or a helicopter or anything like that. Look at real world photos of it. Make sure that you're weathering it appropriately. Unless you're just doing it for fun. If you want to, smudge the whole thing up with black dirt because you feel like doing it, go ahead. No one's going to tell you otherwise. The other thing to be aware of, though, too, is look at the environment in which the aircraft is operating, right? So if you're building a World War II aircraft, so you're building a Spitfire that operated in the desert, well, obviously that would be weathered differently than if you're building a Spitfire, say, that operated out of England, right? The weathering would be different. The dust or the weather washes or whatever it is that you use would be very, very different. And so that's one thing to be aware of. So obviously, like this thing operated off of an aircraft carrier, this would be weathered very differently than, say, an Air Force aircraft, which would operate primarily from a runway. See what I'm saying? So different environments, and that's something to be aware of when you're doing your weathering. So that's enough on that. But obviously, I still have the canopy here all taped up. I'm just doing that to protect and keep it from scratching, things like that. So eventually, I'll get to the point where I can do a reveal, and I may just do a video of me actually peeling back all of the tape and post it on Instagram, most likely. So, but there she sits, guys. Tell me what you think. I am absolutely in love with this model kit. I've always loved the F-14. Of course, you know, Top Gun, great movie. Both of them, Maverick and the original Top Gun, both great movies. So, and, you know, building the iconic F-14, I'm just happy that I get to do it. So, here she looks. And I just love the slanted, you know, forward part of these intakes here. They're just how it just, I don't know, just makes it look really mean. So I was watching a video the other day, and they were talking about flying the F-14, and somebody said that it was like flying a beast, a graceful beast. And, you know, I think that's probably a pretty accurate description of what it's like to fly the F-14. So give you one more shot of the other side here. I really don't like handling this thing too much, because now it's getting to the point where I got doors hanging off of it. I got, you know, this part here hanging off of it, and I'm just afraid that I'm going to break something, and I just really, really, really don't want to do that. So there's a shot of the other side. Look at that. She's just a beauty, and can't wait to show you more progress as I get through it. So I'm going to set it down over here. Okay, so hope you guys like it. Tell me what you think. And if you're building an F-14, tell me what you're doing with it. Tell me what squadron you're doing with it. Maybe if you're doing with a different color scheme, like maybe you're doing the aggressor type color scheme on it. Maybe you're painting an Israeli F-14 or an Iraqi F-14, because when the U.S. retired the F-14, we actually sold them off to other nations. Obviously trimmed down and stripped down and stuff like that. We didn't leave a lot of our technology in it, but we gave them the bare bones versions of it. So, and there are nations out there. I think Iraq might be one of the few nations that's actually still flying those things, or not Iraq, Iran, right? I think so. Maybe it's Iran. That's actually still flying the F-14. So, talking about a aircraft that's almost 60 years old. That's ancient in terms of aircraft. But then again, we're still flying the F-15 and the F-16, which aren't much younger. But anyway, guys, that's all I got for this video. Appreciate y'all watching. Y'all take care. Happy modeling.